All right, keeping it 100. I'm your host, Aiden Thatcher, alongside my producer, Josh Regan. We're going to talk about some big upcoming news, the trade deadline. That's going to be the topic of today's discussion. Going to talk about some buyers, sellers, teams that may be on the cusp of needing a player or maybe are on the cusp of possibly acquiring some assets. So that's what we're going to go over today. So we'll start out here with the sellers, the teams that who I think kind of given up on their season, maybe looking to acquire some prospects, get rid of some old contracts. So the sellers that I wrote down, I have the Nationals, who are kind of having a tough season. They do have Juan Soto, Josh Bell. Those have kind of been the guys that have been their offense. So, Soto has declined a lot of contract offers from the Nationals, a lot of big contract offers. So, it's going to take a probably the kitchen sink to get him. So Nationals are a team I expect to be a seller at the deadline. Another team, the Athletics, it seems like they're always a seller. Look at their catcher, Sean Murphy, for example. He's a good young catcher in this league. Kind of struggling this season, but to be fair, anybody on that Athletics team is kind of having a tough time. So Athletics, that's a team to keep an eye out for on the trade deadline. They also have Frankie Montas, who's a starting pitcher who I think a lot of contenders, for example, the Yankees, the White Sox, who are on the cusp, the Angels could use some starting pitching. So I think the Athletics they also have one of the worst records in MLB. I think they have like the 30th ranked offense and the 30th ranked pitching ERA. So no reason for them to try and get a stud. They also don't have a lot of money, so expect them to be sellers. The Royals, this one's interesting. They have a couple good young players, but I think, guys like Salvador Perez, who's having a rough season, but maybe Greinke could be on the move too. There's, kind of no reason they should be keeping him. Salvy's getting old, hasn't been playing up to his usual standards, especially hitting wise. Fielding, he's not, anything special, but his bat is why they keep him in the lineup. So look for the Royals to maybe be sellers, try and get, maybe some big contracts off their roster. Then we go to another kind of not great franchise in the Pirates. Good thing about the Pirates is they have a lot of young talent. You look at guys like O'Neal Cruz. They've had 3 guys hit 3 home runs consecutively in this season. So they have plenty of young talent. I think for them, maybe kind of keep, maybe trade Brian Reynolds. I'm not sure, what their mentality with him is. They got rid of Cole Tucker, their second baseman. So the Pirates are another team to be on watch for the sellers. And we go to another seller team in the Tigers, who have just had an abysmal season this year. They're, I believe, one of the worst offenses in baseball. Even though they did give Javi Baez a massive contract, but he's not the kind of guy. His fielding's pretty good, but his hitting, I mean, he doesn't hit for average very well. He swings at a lot of pitches outside the zone. So, when you're relying on him, rookie like Spencer Torkelson, they still do have Cabrera, who, I doubt they'll trade him, but that's probably their most valuable piece at this point. I doubt they would trade any of the young guys. So for me, the Tigers, I'd be on the lookout for them. They've had a couple injuries to their starting rotation too, so maybe they try and prepare for next season. And then last for me here, I'm sure Josh isn't going to like to hear this one, but I got the Cubbies, who's a shame because they traded, Rizzo last year, Bryant, Baez, and they're still kind of, struggling a lot this season. The offense hasn't really been there. The good thing is they have Morale, who I think is a bright spot. I think they have some pieces. Contreras obviously playing well, but he could be on the move too. I know a lot of teams need good catchers, and he's arguably been the best catcher this season. So be on the lookout for the Cubs. Hopefully they don't trade Contreras. I know Josh wouldn't like that very much, but I doubt they're going to be big buyers at the deadline. So flip the page now. We'll go to the buyer market, teams that may be looking to acquire some big pieces at the deadline, try and make their team a contender here. So you look at number one, obviously, I think the Yankees, best team in baseball. I think when you look at the Yankees, they've had some injuries in their bullpen. Obviously, Chad Green went down. Chapman's kind of struggled. Loizaga had his injury. So, maybe they look to somebody in the bullpen. I would even not even be surprised if they try to go after a starting pitcher. Obviously, we talked about Frankie Montes, that Reds pitcher, Luis Castillo. He'll probably be available. Forgot to include the Reds too on the seller list. They're definitely up there. Um, but I think, yeah, Yankees either need to target a bullpen, starting pitcher, or maybe an outfield, depending on how well Gallo and Hicks continue to play. Then we go to another big contender. Let's stay in New York. We'll head over to Citi Field and talk about the Mets here. See, the Mets are kind of in an interesting situation because they've been without, in my opinion, their two best players, Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, for basically half of the season. And they're still, one of the best teams in the NL, if not in baseball. So for me, I don't know if they need starting pitch and maybe bullpen. They have Bassett, Carrasco, McGill. So I don't necessarily know if they need anybody in the starting rotation, maybe bullpen. Obviously, they have Diaz who, can throw gas and has that really nice slider. I believe Trevor May's coming back. They still have Lugo. So, maybe they look to add a piece there. But I think offensively, maybe catcher-wise, McCann's not had a great season at the plate, but, still has decent speed and a good defensive catcher. So, maybe they go there. But I think the Mets out of all these teams are, in the best shape considering that they've been without their two best pitchers and, are still dominating. Next one, I was kind of confused whether to put them as a seller or a buyer, but the Angels, kind of seems like the Angels every year disappoint and, don't meet everybody's expectations, even though they have the two best players in baseball. And I don't even think it's close. Maybe some guys have caught up to Trout, but to me, Ohtani, I think, is the best player in baseball. Just his ability to, hit and pitch, another player can do that. So it's hard to argue otherwise, in my opinion. But, I look for the Angels. I think offensively they're fine. They have Walsh. Rendon is out for the season, so that may hurt. They did get Tyler Wade in the offseason. He's not a big power guy, but he can steal bases pretty good defensively, and, his average is okay. Shortstop, Velasquez, he's the same thing. Fast, good fielding, but doesn't hit for power. So, I think they have plenty of good power bats in there. Obviously, Stassi, Walsh, Ohtani. I like Rengifo too, and Trout, obviously. So I think that team's fine. And they have Brandon Marsh too. So if anything, that team just should go in all in bullpen and starters. I think this most recent draft, they literally just picked pitchers. So that kind of shows you where their mindset is at. So to me, I think Angels starting rotation or bullpen, you just go all in because that's really been the weakness of this team. You brought in Syndergaard for 1 year. He hasn't been great. He's been okay. He's like a solid 3 or 4 guy. I think they could use a really good number 2. I think Ohtani is their number 1. But bullpen, literally they just have Iglesias and, not really anybody else. So I think that's something they should look at here. But we'll head over to Houston now to talk about another big buyer, Houston Astros, who are having a phenomenal season this year. They lost, George Springer and Carlos Correa, and they're still, they just plug in pieces. Have that Pena guy to play short. He's having a great season. Almost a better season than Correa is, although Correa was hurt. But then center field, they kind of flip it with Myers and McCormick. So, Springer, I'm sure they would like Springer back, but they haven't lost a step. For me, I think the Astros, I really like their starting rotation. I think Christian Javier, and Valdez are really good. I think for me, their bullpen may be the weak link here, even though I think it's pretty solid. Presley's not bad. They did lose Graveman, so, maybe look to add a piece there. But Astros really don't have many weaknesses, in my opinion. I think this is a team that no team wants to see in the postseason just because of how good their at-bats are. Yordan Alvarez is obviously one of the best hitters in baseball right now. They still have Altuve, Bregman's still good, Pena, Gurriel. So for me, this team maybe just needs to focus on bullpen, maybe add 1 or 2 pieces. That's it. They don't really have to do that much. But for me, this team, put them as a buyer just because I don't think they need a lot, but maybe just one or two to kind of put them over the edge is a really dangerous team. So now we'll go to Boston here, talk about the Red Sox, who got off to a really bad start this season. I believe they were 11-20 at one point, so 9 games behind 500, but they got hot in May. I think they went 20-6 in May. Didn't surprise me. I mean, that offense is loaded with power, contact. I mean, they have Kike Hernandez, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Trevor Story, JD Martinez. So even though he's been struggling lately, he's still having a good season. To me, this team, the big question mark is that starting rotation and the bullpen. I think defensively they're okay, but you look to that starting rotation, you say Pivetta, Waka, Rich Hill. Who knows if they'll get Chris Sale back at this point? Nobody knows. He did have a rough rehab start in his last appearance, so who knows what's going on with Chris Sale. And their bullpen. I mean, their bullpen has been the worst part of their team this season. They don't really have anybody reliable in the pen, really. I mean, even Evaldi is a starting pitcher who did come out of the pen a couple seasons ago. He hasn't been anything special. He's been okay, but you look at their bullpen, you look at guys like Matt Barnes, Garrett Whitlock, you think, oh, okay, those are two good bullpen guys, not great, and then you kind of ignore the rest of them because, they're not really anything special. So for me, if I was the Red Sox, I would be, maybe trading some prospects to get some good starting pitchers, kind of go alongside Pivetta and Evaldi. Look to guys like we talked about with the Reds, maybe looking to deal Castillo. I know the Athletics with Frankie Montas, who is an unbelievable pitcher. Zach Greinke could be an option, a little bit older, but, this could be a World Series or bust this season for the Red Sox because who knows if they want to pay Devers or if they want to pay Bogaerts. I think they're going to have to pick one of the two. So this could be the year to go all in. The Reds also have Tyler Mayhill, so he's another option. If you want to go bullpen, the Pirates may be looking to trade David Bednar. He's a pretty good piece, not great, but a good piece you can bring in. Obviously, David Robertson from the Cubs, Josh knows about him. He could be on the move as well. So those are some pieces that the Red Sox may want to keep an eye out for. So we'll keep it in the American League East here. Head over to Florida, talk about the Rays here, who honestly, you could trade anybody to the Rays, and I feel like they would you could trade me to the Rays, and I feel like they could, make me bat 250 and, be an effective player. The Rays, for some reason, just you don't want to trade with them. They traded Meadows for Paredes, and people thought they were crazy. And how you trade a power bat like Meadows for a guy like Paredes who hasn't proven himself. But, Meadows hasn't hit a home run this season for the Tigers, and I believe Paredes hit like 4 in 5 games. So Rays are a team that you don't want to trade with, but I think they're going to be big buyers at the deadline just because how close that American League East race is with the, Blue Jays, Rays, Yankees, and Red Sox. That's no doubt, in my opinion, best division in baseball, most competitive. But for me, I think the biggest weakness is probably going to be that bullpen. They do have Jason Adam, who's pretty good. I think he's going to be he's on like a dirt cheap contract. So that just goes to show you that these guys can find anybody. But, they've had good starting pitching. Shane McClanahan's obviously one of the best pitchers in baseball. Who knows when they'll get Glasnow back? Shane Baz looks like a good young pitcher for them. But for me, I think that bullpen is something they need to address. They do have some good arms in there, but the Rays, Kevin Cash is kind of that different mentality than other managers in baseball. He's really kind of really strict analytics, specifically pitch count, batters faced around the order. So how many times a starting pitcher has faced the order, and just pitch count. So for me, I think the Rays, that's always been kind of their repertoire. I think they'll look to get a lot of pieces in the bullpen. I think back to that World Series Game 6 when Blake Snell was dealing against the Dodgers, and they took him out even though he was at, I want to say, like 80 pitches. and he let up a single, and Kevin Cash took him out because that's just their mentality. They like going righties on righties. They kind of just stick to the analytics. So to me, the Rays are a team to look out for, but any team traded with them, just be kind of wary that they usually fleece teams. So if I was trading with the Rays, I would just be very cautious. So now we'll keep it in the American League. Head over to Canada, Toronto. Talk about the Blue Jays here, who to me have been very disappointing. And I know, obviously, as a Yankees fan, I'm supposed to say that, but I thought this team was going to be the leader in the American League East. I mean, they have, in my opinion, the best offense in the American League, even though to me the Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays are all very close. But, Vladdy, I think he's had a good season, not great. Bo Bichette, good season, not great. Springer's been good, so that's a good piece for him and good spot for him. But they got Chapman from the Athletics. He's been okay. Great fielder, but his bat has kind of been inconsistent. Obviously, they still have Teoscar Hernandez. Alejandro Kirk's been killing the ball. He's probably been their best offensive piece this season. But for me, Blue Jays, I mean, you talk about the starting rotation. They have guys like Manoah, Barrios, Gausman. Those guys have kind of just struggled this season. Or Manoah hasn't, but, Gausman and Barrios haven't been their usual self. And, they signed Gausman in hopes that he could be a good number one or number two. And, him and Barrios have kind of disappointed this season. I think their bullpen is okay. I don't think it's great. Obviously, they have Jordan Romano. He's pretty good. Aaron Simber, he's kind of inconsistent, have that sidearm delivery. Some days it's there, some days it's not. So for me, if I was the Blue Jays, offensively, you're fine. I would just worry about maybe that starting rotation and that bullpen, especially going into the season. They've used those bullpen guys have a lot of high leverage, and they've been used a lot. So maybe it's time to get a couple more pieces in there to kind of calm down their arms, give them a little break, and prepare for hopefully the postseason. Because I don't know if they'll be a number one seed like the Yankees are right now. I'm not sure if they'll catch up to the Yankees, but that wild card spot is wide open. I believe right now the wild card standings are in the American League, the Red Sox, Rays, and Blue Jays. So all American League East teams, but Blue Jays, I think, focus on that bullpen. It's gonna take you a long way. Now we'll head over to a surprising team, in my opinion, the Minnesota Twins, who were one of the worst teams in baseball last year. Now one of the best offensive teams, at least. They did add guys like Correa. Luis Arias is playing out of his mind. Obviously, Buxton's one of the best players in baseball. They've just had a really, really solid season this season. Mashing the ball. But pitching-wise, I think this is a team who could be looking, for a guy like Frankie Montas, a guy like Luis Castillo, maybe even going out for a Zach Greinke. Just because that wild card is so tight. I'm not sure Joe Ryan's pitched pretty well for him this season, that young rookie, but other than that, Dylan Bundy struggled. They've had some guys that haven't been up to expectations. So I think Twins focus on that bullpen, that starting rotation, maybe look to add a veteran piece, who's not going to be super, expensive and require a lot of prospects, like a guy like Greinke. I don't think you'd have to give a lot to get him. But, the Twins definitely trying to make a playoff push here. I look for them to possibly either add a couple pieces in the bullpen or add a big piece in their starting rotation. So we'll keep it in Chicago here. We talked about the Cubs being sellers. So now we'll go to another Chicago team, the White Sox, who kind of, performed under par this season. I think mainly it's because of their manager. I think Tony La Russa has overstayed his welcome, but I think they've had a couple, tough times with injuries. Obviously, Lance Lynn was hurt at the beginning of the season. They got rid of Rodon. Giolito hasn't been himself. Kopech's been okay. Their bullpen, hasn't been anything special. I know they had Liam Hendricks, who was up for a Cy Young last year. He's been okay this season. They did add Kendall Graveman from the Astros. He's been pretty good as well. But for me, I think the Astros, what has really hurt them is Injuries, they did get Eloy Jimenez back. Offensively, I think they're fine. I think they have, plenty of guys. Tim Anderson, one of the best shortstops in baseball. He's going to be an all-star this year. I think Jose Abreu got off to a slow start, but I still have faith in his bat. Possibly looking for another catcher. I mean, Yasmani Grandal hasn't been playing great this season. His defense isn't, anything great. He's really slow. So, when the bat's not there, the defense isn't there, and, when he gets on base, you can't really trust his base running. Maybe they look to add a guy like Willson Contreras or, maybe Sean Murphy. But yeah, for me, the issue with the White Sox, maybe add another piece in that starting rotation. Johnny Cueto hasn't been, like I said, their bullpen's been okay. So, or their starting rotation's been okay. So I would focus on the pitching and maybe add a piece in the bullpen. And defensively, like I said, I really like a lot of their pieces. Tim Anderson, Abreu, that Berger kid's playing well. They have Pollock still. I really like Luis Robert. But I think Yasmani's having a really bad season this year, which is a shame because he played really well last season, and I thought he was going to be a top catcher. And to be honest, I think he's been one of the worst catchers in baseball. So I think White Sox fans try and ease in on maybe a starting pitcher, maybe a bullpen guy, but offensively, I think you're fine other than the catching position. So that would be my analysis of the White Sox. And now we'll head over to the last team here, the Cleveland Guardians, who I've surprised a lot of people too this season. They've just been good all around. I wouldn't say they're great, but all around. I mean, Kwan's played well. Obviously, they have Jose Ramirez, one of the best shortstops in baseball, probably the best switch hitter in baseball. Naylor's been playing out of his mind. They still have Shane Bieber. Miles Straw, I thought he was going to play really well this year. Really good outfielder for him, good defensively, has a lot of speed, but bat hasn't been there. I think they're batting ninth now, even though he was batting like lead off at the beginning of the season. So I think for the Guardians, maybe look to add an outfield piece. Whether it's for hitting or for defense, there's plenty of guys out there. You could look to a guy like Joey Gallo from the Yankees, Aaron Hicks, Miguel Andujar. Maybe they let one of those guys go for some good prospects. But Cleveland, I think I've been really impressed with their starting rotation. They've had a really solid season this year. Hopefully they can keep it up. But for the Guardians, I think focusing on maybe adding, another good bat in the outfield, maybe a good power bat, and then potentially adding someone in the bullpen. Just to, it's always good to have another bullpen piece. Seems like a lot of these teams, the bullpen is kind of the position that most teams need to target. So, and the good thing is there's plenty of relievers to go around. Obviously, we talked about David Bednar with the Pirates. Robertson, Josh's guy with the Cubs. Chafin, he's with the Tigers. He could be on the move. I think Marlins have Anthony Bass. He could be available. So just some guys that, these teams in the bullpen or these teams looking for bullpen help could be on a lookout for. But those are my buyers and sellers for this upcoming trade deadline. I just want to talk about a few big names who I think could possibly be on the move. Just, some guys who could be looking to go to contenders, or maybe some sellers trying to get some big prospects here. But, I look at a guy like Trey Mancini from the Orioles. He's going to be a free agent this year. Couple teams could use a good first baseman. And I think the Orioles probably, even though they've surprised a lot of people, I don't think they're going to be making the playoffs this season. So anybody in need of the first baseman, Trey Mancini, decent glove, pretty good hitter. He is 30, so, not super young, but can definitely help, your offense. So I think he's a name to keep an eye on here. Another first baseman, Josh Bell. The Nationals, I think, are one of the probably the most interesting team on the selling market here, just because obviously Juan Soto Everybody knows about him. They know about the contract. I really don't think he's going to stay in Washington. I think he wants to go. If somebody offered me 400, almost $500 million, I don't care what team I'm playing on. I'm taking that money. So to me, it seems like he'll be on the move, whether it's this year or next year. That's to be determined. But I think two guys on the Nationals, you look at a guy like Doolittle. I think he could potentially be on the move. And Josh Bell, um, another great first baseman. He got hot a couple weeks ago. Still a really good bat for him. Really good power first baseman. So those are a couple free agents from the Nationals who I think you got to kind of keep your eye out for. Then we'll talk about outfielders because it seems like a lot of these teams need outfield help. Obviously, we talked about some Pirates. We talked about Brian Reynolds, who not young, but I think he's hitting 15 home runs this year, has a good slugging and OPS. So he's a name to keep an eye out for. Joey Gallo. I know a lot of people, a lot of Yankees fans do not like seeing him come up to the bat. Kind of has a very selfish approach. Sometimes kind of just tries to hit for home runs. So, our team's going to be looking to add him. Has a lot of strikeouts. His average isn't great. Has a great glove, though. I mean, defensively, you can't deny his defensive prowess. He has a great arm, good range. So he's another outfielder to keep in mind for. Plus, he's lefty, too. A lot of teams, you look at like the Blue Jays, for example, have a lot of righties in that lineup, don't really have a lot of lefties. So could they be looking to add potentially another piece there? But I look at a guy like Mitch Haniger too, with the Marlins, or not with the Marlins, with the Mariners. Mariners, I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. It's kind of like last year where they're, on that edge right there. I don't think we'll make it. I'm not sure that they're good enough yet, although Julio Rodriguez is playing out of his mind. They still have guys like Ty France. Starting rotation's pretty good, but I look for a team to look for Mitch Haniger here, try to add him, and really try and kind of stabilize their outfield. And then last, this one may kind of come surprisingly, but Andrew Benintendi from the Royals, another outfielder we're going to talk about here, has a lot of speed, a really good hitter, another lefty bat that teams could be looking to add. Royals, I think, are going to be big sellers. I think they really like a lot of the young prospects they had, and this season is kind of just like what's a good word to say? Not a throwaway season, but a good developing. That's a good word, developing. So you look at guys like Whit Merrifield, Bobby Witt. Those guys will get better. But to me, I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of Benintendi and really just kind of put their focus on next season. But those are the outfielders who I want to talk about, and some free agent hitters, I should say. Now we'll head over to some big pitchers here. Obviously, we talked about Frankie with the Athletics. I think out of anybody that is going to be traded this deadline, I think he is a most definite. It's not even close. You look at the Athletics, they just, for anybody who's seen the movie Moneyball, they just don't have a lot of money as other teams. So they have to operate in different ways and find other ways to win. And I think guys like Sean Murphy and Frankie Montas, they probably won't be on the team, and that's just how the Athletics work. So I think he will definitely be traded. I think you look at a lot of guys from the Reds, Minor, Mayhill, and Castillo. I think, the Reds were off to one of the worst starts in baseball history this season, have kind of picked it up, but that team is not going to do anything this season. So I think maybe focusing on next season is their best decision. And another big guy, the Diamondbacks, who I thought early on were going to maybe potentially make a postseason run. I think that's kind of gone in the past here, but they still have Zach Davies, Madison Bumgarner. So those are two starting pitchers who could go into any starting rotation. A lot of rotations in baseball. Need a good lefty pitcher. Zach Davies has been one of the best ready pitchers this season for them. So those are two pitchers who I would keep an eye on as well. Madison a little bit older. I'm not sure what his contract situation looks like, but he's getting on the older side here. So those are just some trade deadline things we want to go over, some buyers and sellers, and some possible big names that could be on the move here. But that's going to conclude this episode here of Keeping It 100, and we'll see what happens at the deadline.